Hello, welcome to the first ever Eisen Digital After Effects tutorial. I am Miran Patel and I am going to show you how to make the cool little fly-through that you saw at the start of this video. So first what you want to do is get a picture like this, just a cool landscape, whatever you want to do a camera fly-through of, and you got to take it into Photoshop. We're in Photoshop right now, and what you're going to do is separate all of these cliffs like that you want to fly through, and separate them all to make individual layers with them. So I've done that already, which I'll show you in a second, but I'll show you how I did it first. So I'm going to duplicate the layer here. You can click Command J to duplicate layers in Photoshop, as you can see I'm duplicating. Right, so we have this first layer, and the first layer is obviously just going to be this bit here in the background. Now what you want to do is get rid of everything that you don't want. The brush, I'd like to set it to about 90 or like 95 so that the edges aren't super harsh. Right, so we're going to get rid of everything that we don't want. What you need to do is clone the mountain around the edges, right? So make sure you have the right layer selected and just go over these edges. Now the reason why we're doing this is because when the camera flies through, it's going to reveal parts of the mountain that we haven't seen. So you need to basically create like the rest of the mountain. So all you need to do is go through like some of the edges, right, and then you have a little bit more of each layer. So you want to do that with that layer, and then the next layer would be this part of the mountain here. So you just want to go in there and separate this bit, and then what you want to do is get nice and close to these edges. There, right, nice and close to the edges, and a little trick to add a little bit of texture, because I mean you can see these are trees at the top. It's not just a sharp mountain top like this. Obviously we don't need that there. Right, what you can do is get in there nice and close, and crap, what am I doing? Bloody hell, there we go. Alright, get in there nice and close, and take away those trees, but then put them back using a different brush. I mean, like, you can go on loads of different websites and find tons of different brushes, but there's one here in Photoshop which will do just nicely. That brush, it's like a grass type, and you want to make it nice and small, and then need to make sure the both colours are white. What you want to do is just go over, and you can see you're getting like the trees back there, but with like a nice kind of texture to them, as if we've just got the trees and not the sky and stuff. You see that compared to this? See, it's all flat there, and it's like nice and tree-like here. So anyway, what you want to do is go through every layer, right? So I've done that already in much more detail. You want to spend a good like hour like getting all the edges perfect, and this is the one that I have now. All the layers are separate, so you can see I've added my own sky as well in the background, and you can see like some bits look a little bit different, and that's because of obviously the cloning that you go through. So if I show you all the layers here, so that's the original. Got a sky here. I've got 2 layers of sky actually, because I want to make one of them move slightly. I've used a screen overlay. Then we have this bit of mountain in the background. Then we've got this part on the side, this one on the left. This is all going to be one layer because they're quite like in line with each other. This big mountain here on the right and the big one on the left. And then we got this little mound here, like these 2 mounds here, like in the foreground. Right, so I've got this. what you want to do is open up After Effects, and you want to find the layers.psd, that's what I've called it. Throw it into After Effects. You want to import it as composition, editable layer styles. Right, now make a new composition, and we'll make it 720 by 1280. Don't need that many frames, we'll just make it 250 maybe. That'll be 10 seconds of 25 frames per second, or in fact we'll make it less than that, we'll make it 8 seconds. Okay, right, so this is our composition. We'll set it to 100. We want to open up this layers composition. We're going to take all the layers from it, just Command C and then Command V. Right, so luckily all these layers, I mean, when you look for an image that you want to use, or if you have an image, make sure it's a large image, because not only do you want like the detail, you don't want it blown up like into 1080p when it's like a 300 by 300 image, like it will just look terrible. Alright, but what you want to make sure is it's a big image, because when you zoom in you're obviously going to get closer to the image, so you need to have that pixel detail there, so that it all looks good. Right, so what I'm going to do is scale all this down. About there is fine, doesn't really matter. Okay. Right, we want to make a new camera. Let's make it 28mm. Looks like quite a wide shot. I'm going to make these simple things as fast as possible, because I'm going to go into detail with making this fly through look good. Alright, so you want to make these all 3D layers, and we'll solo, oh wait, this is just the black background. Alright, we'll solo this BG slash layers layer, and oh sorry, that's like the original image, isn't it? Okay, there we go. Right, we got the sky there, so let's leave the sky for now. Right, this mountain. Okay, so top view, and we can see that the camera's here, and that is where that mountain layer is at the moment in 3D space. Right, what we want to do is push it back really far, like, you know, try and look at this in like a realistic perspective, as realistic as you can. That mountain is obviously super far back, so you want to push it like as far back as you can, really. About there. That'll do. Alright, go back to active camera, and now you can see it's really tiny there. So, you know what, I shouldn't have deleted one of those layers. Right, if I copy that, the BG layer, which is the original image, and then what I'll do is copy and paste this, the scale and the position. There we go. That's how big I know I need the mountain. So if I grab that, knock off the 3D on this, so now I can see that layer. I'm going to move the position and bring up the scale big time. That's about almost right, yeah. Increase the scale a little bit, I think. There. Okay, and bam, there we go. We've got our first layer in place. So if I knock that off, that's what it looks like at the moment. Right, so let's turn the other layer on. Right, same thing again. So with all these positions, right, I'll just turn on all the layers. Shut off those ones. Put on the top view. Right, so this foreground layer is just those little mounds so we want to put that a little bit closer to the camera, about here. Okay, this next layer is the two big mountains, so we want to push it back a little bit more, I think. About there, I think. Okay, so this next layer, I think that's the mountain just behind that one, so that'll be quite close, about here. This is the mountain further on the right, so that'll be about here, I think, about halfway. So I think that's good, position-wise, in Z space, position-wise. Now, this is what we have. We want to scale up all of these and position them properly. So I've turned on that background layer, the original image, and so I could line it all up with that. So let's do the foreground first. Oh, there it is. Bloody hell. Okay, scale it down. So yeah, when I make this live and stuff, comment on it, tell me what you like. I mean, like, this is my first tutorial, so you know, there might be things that you want me to change with the way I do it, but I'm trying my best to make it informative because I want people to learn. There we go. Yeah, that'll do, I think. That looks fine. So I'm a bit of a perfectionist, like, I mean, you have to be a perfectionist to do effects and stuff. It really helps. But that should be fine. There's no point in going into too much detail because it is just a tutorial. Okay, next layer. Let's scale that up, reposition it. Oh, that'll do. Okay, right. Next layer. Ooh, it's a little bit bigger, but that's fine. Okay, cool. Alright. Now we got the skies as well, so let's just take the position of that layer that's furthest back and let's just use that position. I think that'll be good enough. Well, by good enough I don't mean like good enough as in low standards, but that will suffice for what we're doing. If you really want to go into detail, what you can do is make that sky layer angled, so that it's angled towards the camera about like 45 degrees. So then you'll get a little bit of parallaxing, like as the camera moves forward, as if the sky is really overhead. There we go. I'm going to scale that up big time, and then what I'm going to do is set the position of this layer and just move it across slightly. A little bit of movement in the sky. I'm sure you know how to do keyframes in After Effects, but you click on this little timer here, and you get a little keyframe node right here where the timer is. Then you want to move it across to the other side and just change the position slightly, and it automatically creates a new keyframe. If I just copy that, that looks quite nice and smooth. Alright, cool. Right, now, here's the fun bit. We have all our layers in 3D space now, and they're all separated, all the cliffs and stuff. Now all we need to do is click on a keyframe for the camera, and the end of the clip, we want to move it forward slightly, and there you go. Now you can see like all the bits, like now you know why we needed to do the cloning, because if we didn't do the cloning, then we'll be able to see a lot more black than you can right now. But just to just to get rid of that, what I'm going to do is set a keyframe for the point of interest, because we want the point of interest to stay the same, and then make the camera a little bit lower down. So if I just click C to get that node up, that cursor up. There, that looks quite nice. Alright, so now we got camera coming in, and slowly it's panning up as it moves into the frame. I think maybe these mounds might be a little bit too close, so what I'm going to do is just move them back. So if I go to the top view again, yeah, let's move it back to about here. Scale that up. Oh, that looks great. Alright, let's watch that back. There you go. It's nice and subtle. Maybe a little bit slow. So let's like, you know, you can pull these keyframes back and then just make the clip shorter, but I'm going to be a daredevil and just move closer. I don't think that's going to work actually. The mountain in the background is getting cut off there. You can see I haven't finished a bit there. What can I do to solve that? Let's have a look. I could change the whole entire like scenery if I wanted to. Let's see. Can I move that back? Yeah, I can just do that and hide that little bit of mess. Going across a little bit. Oh yeah, that's cool. That looks good. Okay, so now that's just like the basics. If you want to end with the basics, you can end there. But now we're going to go into real hardcore compositing. If you want to be a hardcore compositor, then watch on. Okay, so first off, what we're going to do is give these mountains some light wrap. Now you can go into like some real complex stuff here, like with tons of pre-comps and everything, to get this looking right. But what I'm going to do to just keep it simple is use some edge blur, and the edge blur will blur out the edges into whatever is behind it. So get edge blur out here on the foreground, and you can see it's quite obvious right here. So we want to bring that down a lot, so maybe just 1. Now on and off. Now you can see it's kind of blended. It doesn't look so bad. It doesn't look like it's blurred. It just looks like it's blending into what's behind it. Very subtle. So I want to copy that, put it on the next layer. Now have a look at these mountains. Very, very subtle difference, but it does help a lot. Now the next thing I want to do is, like, some of these edges look a little bit fake. So I mean, because like I only just went in with the masking tool, like, and just brushed it over in Photoshop. So what you can do is, I'm going to grab this mountain here, this one here, well, it's both of these, and right click, or in fact I don't know where it is, so I'm just going to go into the effects and presets over here and search for it. Roughen edges, there we go, right here. And I'm going to drop that in. Now you can see what it's doing there. Like, at the moment it's actually smoothing it out, which I don't want. I want to make it rough, like a mountain. So what I'm going to do is bring down the scale to about 20, and let's see what other settings I can play around with. I'm going to put that behind the edge blur because I want the blur to happen afterwards. Obviously, I can bring down the border. if you scale it up to the extreme, then you can see what's happening there. So really I want it quite low. So that's on and off. You can see what it's doing, like very slightly. It's making those edges a little bit more interesting. Gives it a little bit of realism to it. You can have a look at it down on the side as well. There. I think it looks much better actually. There. Decrease the scale to 10. I'm just going to copy paste that roughened edges on the next layer down, and then this one down here, and this one in the far background. There we go. Now we've made the edges a little bit nicer. This is all off. This is all on. Right, now what we need to do is add atmosphere, right? So we've only got flat layers that we're flying through. Let's like make it a little bit more interesting. So what we're going to do is make a new solid, and we're going to right click, go to trap code particular. So right now we got just like these little circles just appearing, little spheres, and the camera's moving through it, because particular is automatically 3D. So what we want to do, because that just looks stupid, we want to make a kind of cloud formation, if you know what I mean. Just so it seems like there's a little bit of atmosphere like that we're flowing through, because it's not going to be super clean like this. So what we want to do is set the emitter type to box. There we go. And set it so that it's super wide. Let's sort of like knock up the particles here so we can see what we're working with. Emitter size, the X to be quite large. And then we'll set the Y up to be nice and big, about there, and then just move it down as well. There we go. I want to make it like a fog, a low-lying fog. So I don't want it all up here. Just going to put it down here. And then what we want to do is make the Z quite deep. Let's just bring that back about here. Right, so this is what we're kind of doing at the moment. We're going through the fog. So how about we make that a little bit deeper and move it a bit. That'll do. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and now we don't want these particles to be moving all over the place, so let's just set this to 10. We want it to move slightly, but just not like ridiculously. There you go. There. Now, oh, I'm going to move this down as well a little bit more. There we go. Right, so positioned it now. We want a few more particles, I think, and we want to set the particles to have a life of like anything, just something ridiculous. And we also want to keyframe this, the particles per second, because we don't want clouds to just form out of nowhere, right? So if I click the particles /second and I clicked on the timer, now I'm just going to hit U, and it's going to come up with all the keyframes I've got on this layer. I'm going to move across and I'm going to hit for another keyframe, go forward a frame, and then go to 0. So at this point on, there's not going to be any more particles forming, and I'm just going to move the layer back so that it starts in our timeline at the point where there's no more particles forming. Right, so I want to make sure that this is going to be like on 20 or something, so that the particles never die randomly in the timeline. I mean, imagine if you were out one day on a foggy day and all of a sudden all the fog just disappeared in the space of a frame. So, I don't know, a millisecond. That would just be really weird. It wouldn't be realistic, and that's what compositing is all about. Making things realistic. So, clouds are not this small. So, we're going to increase the size, and we're also going to just change the particle type to cloudlet. There we go. And they're not this thick in real life either. So we're going to set the opacity to like 1. There. And then opacity random, maybe increase that to about 40 or something. Yeah, 39, that's fine. I'm sure there's a lot of OCD guys watching this and you're thinking 39, can't have 39, so just for your sake, it's on 40 now. We're going to increase the size again as well, like make it a little bit bigger again. There. Yeah, and now I'll set that opacity down to 0.5. There. Okay. We can change the opacity of the whole layer as well if we want to. Before I do a little RAM preview again, the wind in the sky is obviously moving from right to left as I move the clouds. So let's add a little bit of wind to this fog as well. So we're going to set the wind X to -60. I think that might be alright. I'm going to set the opacity of the actual layer itself a little bit lower. There, about 56. Alright, so let's do a little RAM preview of that. So maybe you're thinking, Mirren, I don't want fog in my shot. It's not the right feel for the film. It's not the right emotions that you want to portray. Well then, you should rent a helicopter and fly to the location that you want to film. No, I'm just kidding. Well, if that's the case, then just don't add the fog. You don't have to add the fog, but it helps sell the effect. You can have like a really light fog if you want, like just little bits of particle, just you know, 1 or 2 pieces flying through. But you know, the more things that you have flying past the camera, the more realistic, the cooler it will look, the more dynamic the shot will look. So adding the fog will have constant like wind, like, you know, particles, like cloud-like particles flying past the camera, and it might be really subtle, but it really sells off the effect. So that's that playing back. See, it looks quite nice. Now you have a problem with some particles. As it goes past the camera, it just vanishes, and then like obviously it's a very dramatic, not dramatic, I mean it's a really harsh like look, and it's quite obvious as the camera goes past those particles, because I mean at the end of the day they are flat. They're flat particles. They're not going to have depth to them. So as the camera goes past, they instantly disappear, and you can tell, like around here. There we go. Yeah, you can see a couple of them just disappearing. It's minor. It's like you can hardly tell. There you go. Look, you can see here, right here. If I scrub this bit here, all of a sudden, instantly it changes lightness. That's because one of the particles is going past the camera. So what we can do to fix that is just click on the visibility and have the near start fade and the near vanish. We'll just change that slightly. So we want to keep the near vanish to 1, but we want to start the fade about like maybe 100. Set it to 100 pixels. So that way they're going to fade out rather than just vanishing over the space of 10 pixels. What you can also do is what I've done in a few of my fly-throughs, is you can have multiple sets of particle layers, because these particles, they're 3D, they're in a 3D environment, I mean, but they're not actually reacting to these other layers. It's because we're using After Effects, not Nuke. Nuke is another compositing program which has a nodal-based system, but After Effects, with its layer-based system, these particles are on top of everything. So if I wanted them to go further back, like all the way down, like in these little crevices and like just in front of this mountain here in the background, these particles are still going to be on top of everything else. On top of this mountain here, on top of this mountain here, and you know, the foreground. So what you can do is make multiple cloud layers and put them lower down in this layer list. Therefore they'll appear underneath the other layers and it will look like they're further in the background. Like if I just put this layer of particles underneath this foreground layer, all of a sudden you see that difference. Now they're not in front of that layer, but I want them in front of that layer. But what I'm going to do, I'll duplicate that and I'll put it all the way down here. Here, there we go. Like I said, I wanted them here in front of this mountain, and what I'm going to do is move them back as well in Z space. Can you see them? I'll turn off the other one. There we go. Right, so there, move them back, move them down, and move them across. I'm going to make this emitter size a lot wider, and I'm going to make it a lot shallower as well. I want a low-lying mist there. Okay, so if I scrub through this, there, you see that little mist in the background. I'm going to set the opacity of the layer a little bit higher. There you go, so now you've got a little mist in the background. Turn on the other layer. There you go. Alright, so now the one last thing to sell this effect is, in real life, basically what you want to do, like when you're compositing or doing any sort of effects, you just want to relate it to real life. So maybe even go on YouTube. Like once I was doing some smoke fall off from a gun. So what I did is just go on YouTube and look at videos of guns firing and look at how the smoke comes out and how it looks like when you're firing a machine gun as well, and you know, the different kind of smoke patterns and the way it will react when firing different kind of weapons. So you know, looking at real life footage really helps sell your own effects, because you will realise sometimes you need to downgrade the quality of your effects. You have to make effort into making it looking bad just so that it looks more realistic. But it's better to do that than have some really clean effect that just looks fake. I mean, that's great for motion graphics, but not when you're doing effects for a film. So this camera movement, at the moment, you look at it, it's just a smooth, like, you know, movement that just goes straight, like, through these mountains. And that's not realistic. When you do this in real life, even if you're using like a helicopter and everything, like, it might not be like a super smooth like motion. The camera will rattle, you know, it will move slightly. So what you want to do is Alt click on the point of interest, Alt click on the position, and we're going to add a little bit of a wiggle, okay, but you got to make sure you don't do it to the extreme. So I'm going to type in wiggle, bracket. So the first number is how much it shakes in that time, and the second number is how much it shakes by. So the first number is the time, the second number is how many pixels. So if I set that to 100 and then put this on like 2, then you're going to have like ridiculous motion and it's going to move quite slowly. What you want to do is think about it in a realistic point of view. The camera itself would shake small amounts, really small amounts, and maybe quite fast but I don't want to make it too fast because it might ruin the shot. And like in real life, if you got that shot and the camera was shaking so much, then you would probably do something in post to smoothen it out. So what I want to do is set this to 1. That's how much shake the camera will have, and I'm going to set the amount to, I'm going to leave it to 2. Alright, and now the point of interest, on the other hand, right, if the camera like rotates the tiniest bit, like 1 degree, right, the point of interest actually will move a ridiculous amount. Like it will move across the whole entire landscape, and when we're looking at it, like if I look at it on the top view, and you'll see what the point of interest is. That point there at the moment is the point of interest. Okay, so if this camera rotates slightly, here I'll do, there we go, Y rotation. That's the slightest little turn. Okay, if you look at the actual camera, right, it moved the tiniest little bit. Yeah, that's before, and that's how much it's moved. There, the tiniest little bit, right? And the cameraman might accidentally do that, right? He might rotate just slightly, and if he does that, this is how much he's moved the point of interest. That's a big difference, right? So when setting the wiggle for the point of interest, you want to give it a little bit more leeway. So wiggle, we'll have it set to 2 again. Might change that to something a bit lower, and we'll set this to 2. Ooh. So that's actually twice the amount that we're moving the position. So that's quite a lot. But we'll see how it looks, because every fly through that you do, you're going to need a different wiggle amount. Like if the camera is moving through a massive landscape, then maybe you need to wiggle it a little bit more. And if it's moving through a tiny little landscape, if the layers are really close to each other, then maybe you need to wiggle a little bit less. So let's have a look and see how that looks. What you could do is go into the wiggle of the X rotation, the Y rotation, the Z rotation, because I mean all those positions will move as well, but wiggling the point of interest would automatically rotate the camera. So let's say the point of interest moved from here to like boof down here, somewhere like ridiculous. The camera automatically rotates towards that point. So you don't really need to do that, do you? No. No, you don't. Let's have a look at that. Ah, okay, right. So can you see that? Can you see that slight little jitter that you have? If you look at the sides and at the edges, you can tell that there's slight little motion, that the camera's like wobbling a little bit, and it kind of sells the effect a lot more, as if you're really flying through that in real life. I'm gonna finish this off by just adding a little adjustment layer and doing some color correction. So just gonna throw in the curves there, darken it up. One last thing, another thing. I'm gonna add another adjustment layer, and now don't forget we've used images here, and if I render this out as it is, you're just gonna have flat images that have obviously not been filmed. Now to make it look like it's been filmed, we can add stuff like noise and grain. So what I'm going to do is just click on noise. I'm going to set that to 1. No, I'm going to set that to 2. There we go. Turn it on and off, and you can see just tiny little bits. In fact, you know what? I'm going to set that to 3. There we go. And I'm going to click off the use color noise. I just want black and white noise. And if you go through this a little bit, let me just render a couple frames. You might be able to tell, I'm not sure if you can tell, like on your screen, because this is being rendered out and uploaded obviously, but you can see, especially here in this dark area, like there's noise. There's the only way I could describe it. Like instead of being clean, it's a little bit jumpy on each pixel, right? So if I play that back, can you see that? It's very tiny amount of difference. but it sells the effect a lot better. If I just put that there, and now you can see, like, if you can see a little bit of jumpiness in this little shadow area, right? If I turn the layer off and then back on, can you see? It's clean here now, and turn it back on, and you can see a little bit of dirt, basically. So yeah, that's your noise. You can add grain as well, if you want to. Add grain. We've got a little box here to show you what it's going to look like. See, it looks horrible, as if it's filmed on a rubbish camera. So sometimes you don't want to use it, but let's 0.3. Let's turn the intensity down a bit. It's like hardly noticeable. So let's just set that to final output. Turn it off. Turn it back on. Can't really tell. Let's put it on 0.4, and let's set the size down to 0.7. And we'll play back a few frames, and oh yeah, you can definitely tell now. Yeah, it looks like it's horrible, to be honest. It looks like it's being filmed on a very, very bad camera. So let's set that back down to 0.2. Couldn't really tell on one frame, but when you play it back, you can tell. Which is the whole operation that we're doing here. We're making it look like it's filmed, so when you play it back, you can tell. Probably won't be able to tell on a single frame. Now, let's play that back. Yeah, it looks alright. Looks alright. What do you think? Looks good? You like that? Let's put that down to 0.2, 0.1 I mean. Right, so I don't know how long this tutorial has gone on for, probably a while, so yeah, I'm sorry about that. But it is my first tutorial, so maybe I'll make it faster next time. Now, what you could do, if you, like, you know, depending on different images, I mean, like, when you talk about effects, yeah, and you look at a tutorial and, you know, someone shows you how to do something, you don't copy it exactly, you learn how they've made that and you create your own thing. So you're obviously not going to use this image, you're going to use other images, and depending on the image you're going to have to change a few things up, like maybe the camera motion has to be a bit different, or I don't know, anything. But this image in particular has a waterfall right here, and obviously if I used this in a film, which I'm not going to, this waterfall will be flat and it will be obviously fake, so it will look stupid, right? But what I could do is just animate that waterfall, like take that separately from this layer and animate it so that, you know, there's particles, like, because I mean this is like not fog, but it's like water fall off kind of thing, like, you know what I mean, like they're droplets of water and it looks like a little bit of a fog. And this far away, you can easily use particular and make like particles just drift up, and it will make it look like you know, there's a waterfall there. It will make it look more realistic. So you got to do that. You got to think about that with the images that you use. Like, you know, there's different things in there. In fact, one of the fly-throughs that I've done on my Gene trailer, I might play the clip right now. In fact, while I'm talking, the foreground mountain. When I made the fly-through, because it goes past the camera, it looks so flat and fake, because like as it goes past the camera, that's one thing that you want to be careful about when you're using these flat layers and your camera's going through them. If your camera goes past a layer, you'll be able to tell instantly that the layer is flat because it has no dimension to it, like it has no depth to it, it just comes off the frame. So if I play this back, I mean, you could kind of tell with this layer here in the left corner, right? So what I did in this shot was that this foreground mountain, I actually replaced it with a 3D mountain in After Effects using Trapcode Form. I formed out what that mountain looked like and literally just replaced exactly what it looked like, but with a 3D form of it. I thought that was pretty amazing that I did that in After Effects. So maybe I'll make a tutorial on how to do that. But apart from that, I hope you had fun learning this tutorial, and we'll play this back one more time.